Welcome to the Soul Talks podcast, where we equip pastors, leaders, and other men and women in ministry to thrive with Jesus in their life and leadership. Now let's join Bill and Kristi Gaultier, doctors in psychology, spiritual directors, and founders of Soul Shepherding.
So, Kristi, your glasses are crooked, and it's bothering my perfectionism. It's making me really anxious, and we're about to talk about the non-anxious presence for others.
It's so funny because I've been wearing these glasses even though one of the sides broke off, so it only has one earpiece, because I thought they were more flattering on me than my ones that aren't broken. I had no idea it was bothering you.
You could toss them in the garbage.
I'm so glad you told me. I will pick up my old pair that's 5 years old and out of style, but does not crinkle on my face.
I've been constantly refocusing it. Let it go, Bill. It doesn't really matter. It's just hard to keep a straight face while we're talking here, and your glasses are like an inch off. So. Yes, I'm a perfectionist.
Oh, well, thanks for telling me. And I'm vain. I was trying to wear the glasses I thought were more flattering, even though they're crooked.
Oh, fun. So what are we talking about on Soul Talks today?
Well, we're in our Re-Soul series here because we're talking about burnout and the hidden causes of burnout. And this episode is the hidden cause of internalizing stress and how that leads us to burnout. And you know a little bit about this.
I know a little bit about internalizing stress and anxiety. Yep.
Yeah, you were kind of formed in this growing up. You learned to internalize stress pretty early on, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So Larry Winger, who is on staff at Eastside Christian Church in Anaheim, wrote at the beginning of your Easy Yoke book as a testimony, eventually our well runs dry. Perhaps we dig into the arid ground of perfectionism, anxiety, overwork, or self-promotion. The Easy Yoke book is a map to show us where to dig deeply into the wellspring of God's sustaining grace. He says, I'm so grateful for Bill Gaultier, who lived Easy Yoke before he wrote it. He's helped countless harried leaders like me drink from the life-giving waters of Jesus.
It's a book for people in danger of burnout because it comes out of my story as a burned out pastor and counselor who had been internalizing stress for a lot of years.
And why did you do that? Why did you internalize stress?
Oh, to protect my mom, who I'm the oldest of 5 kids growing up, and she had a lot on her plate, and I just was very sensitive to her feelings and didn't want to make life harder on her, so I just tried to be good and helpful and responsible in everything I did.
And did it serve you? Did it work for a while? Did it work for you?
Well, I was a hero child in terms of my family role, and I had success in school and athletics and was a good Christian, and so I got a lot of praise for that. And as a young person, I liked that and I wanted that.
Did it make you feel strong?
Yeah, it made me feel strong, but it also made me anxious, and it took a while for me to put 2 and 2 together there. But it was just a lot of pressure and expectation and doing too much and listening to and absorbing other people's feelings, but not sharing my own. So you might wonder, why would somebody become a psychologist anyway? Well, this is an example.
When did you wake up to the fact that you were doing that? I'm aware.
Yeah, it really wasn't until college, and I was studying to be a psychologist because I wanted to help other people, particularly in a Christian context, and I really felt called to it as a ministry, and because the Bride of Christ is suffering, and just had a real heart of compassion for people to learn how to live the gospel of Jesus like they did in the book of Acts, that it's a real thriving thing of intimacy with God and joy and peace and power, works of compassion and sharing the gospel and bringing ministry and healing to people. So I wanted that to see that life realized and felt like understanding people and personalities and relationships and the psychology of faith and spirituality, that was my way to do that.
So did you ever feel like God had called you to internalize stress for
No,
people?
no, I was obviously, I mean, well, I don't know. I wouldn't have said that, but maybe I did think I was doing a good thing. I thought I was serving the Lord, and I was, but I didn't understand how to do that in a healthy way. And so in my psychology classes in Christian college, I started to learn. And fortunately, I wisened up, and the Lord humbled me, particularly through one of my professors that I really liked. And she really took me under her wing. And I began applying what I was learning to myself. Because originally, when I went in to study psychology, I had a lot of arrogance in me and thought, well, I don't really need this, but I need it to help other people. And I know other people are in these classes because they're trying to figure themselves out and they're broken. And because, I knew, people go into psychology to do that, but not me. That's how I thought about it. I'm sad to say. But then I realized, no, it is me. I need a lot of help here. And so I started meeting with this counselor who was my teacher, and she gave me counseling.
And the internalized stress, it leads to you feeling a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and anxiety. I think that's a key thing as it relates to burnout here. And see, that's what was eroding my soul energy and capacity in my burnout years ago, was that I was internalizing all this stress. And when you do that, you're converting stress into anxiety. And so stress is, changes in life and responsibilities and crises that happen, and it's exciting things that happen in your life, many positive things, anything that's going on in your life that is some sort of a change or challenge or an opportunity. It's a kind of a stress. Stress isn't negative. It's part of life. If you don't have any stress, you're dead. So the problem comes when it's not just too much stress. I mean, that can be a problem, but it's really a lot more about internalizing it.
Well, some people might be listening and thinking, well, it's better than externalizing it. Like if I externalize it, I'm going to hurt people.
Yeah, well, that's true. If you react to stress in ways that you lose your temper, you're insulting of people, that is damaging. And some of us who have been damaged by somebody's anger, we may make a vow, like, I'm never going to do that to other people. And so we will internalize our anger as a way to not put it on anybody else. And so we do violence to our own self to protect others.
So what are some safe ways that you can not internalize stress?
Well, you've got to start feeling your emotions. And so for me, that was quite a journey. The distance from your head to your heart, it's just a couple feet, but it can be miles and miles in the realm of the soul. And so, I wasn't, as I'm sharing with my story, I was not aware of my feelings growing up. I was aware of my mom's feelings and other people's feelings, but not my own. And I would be at times when I lost my temper, or at times when I was totally overwhelmed with anxiety, but I didn't really have words to describe what was going on. That came in the course of studying psychology, reading the Bible differently, being in counseling, developing friendships that were emotionally honest, and that sort of thing. I began to learn the language of emotions, and because I was applying what I was learning in my Christian psychology studies to myself, that really helped me. And so I realized, okay, I need to build into my life that I'm talking openly and honestly with somebody regularly. And so I just started doing that, first with counselors and with friends and then with spiritual directors, but just having people in my life that I regularly meet with and I'm vulnerable with, and they're going to ask me, well, how are you feeling? And they're going to keep a confidence. And I just knew I needed that in my life. And so it took some, years of discipline to sort of develop that habit. Now it's like so natural to me that I don't even have to think about it. It doesn't even need it as a spiritual discipline on my list anymore, because I just do it because it helps me breathe in my soul.
Yes, and that's so important. I'm so grateful that you do that. I want to back up a minute to kind of ways that we can wake up to that we internalize stress, because I think one of those ways that I hear talking to a lot of people who come to me is in our body. They wake up to symptoms in their body that scare them, that they don't understand. They get referred because of a doctor. They've gone to a doctor because of some physical symptoms, and the doctor said, you need to deal with your stress. So did you have that, symptoms of internalized stress in your body?
Well, one of the things that's really helped me is I like to exercise, and that's a way that I've dealt with stress and pressure and frustration and anxiety is regular exercise, and especially over the years learning how to do that with Jesus, and while I'm meditating on Scripture and being grateful to God and appreciating the beauty of God's creation has really helped me. So, I mean, I've certainly had some physical symptoms in my life that are stress related that have gotten my attention, but I don't recall that being a significant factor in the inception of this journey for me of more vulnerability. And so, I really hope that if you're listening right now and you're a lead pastor or you're a leader in an organization, you've got a lot of people that look to you, you're ambitious, you're a type A like me. I just hope that you're really open to the Lord speaking to you about how are you dealing with your vulnerabilities. Because it's so easy if you're like me to just fool yourself and project your needs and your emotions into other people who you now teach, lead, help. And you might be very effective at doing that, at least in some ways. And so we can fool ourselves, and that's why burnout is so pernicious. We all think, "Oh, I'm not in danger of that. I'm not burned out," until we just really are, and then we might admit it, and it might be easier to say I'm burned out than to say, "Oh, I was depressed or had a moral failing or whatever." But we really, especially those of us who are charger types and we're confident, we just don't think that's going to happen to me.
Yeah, well, even some of us that aren't charger types like me, I'm thinking back to 33 years ago, and I'm thinking about, I was a new therapist in grad school, and one of my first clients was a teenager who came to me because she was vomiting every morning before school because of anxiety. And I remember feeling kind of, arrogant about, wow, that's a lot of anxiety. How could anybody be that anxious and all this kind of thing? And then I realized that we needed to quit our job. We were college pastors, and I couldn't handle working as a college pastor and going to grad school full time and being a year into our marriage and also working another job to put ourselves through grad school. But my pride didn't want to admit that I was internalizing stress about it until I started having dreams that were traumatic. And then I woke up one morning and lo and behold, I vomited and discovered that it was anxiety. And I'd never had an experience of anxiety in my body like that before. It was really humbling for me, and it made me realize I can't keep youth pastoring. It was like the final signal God had to give me that he was asking us to let that go, to resign from that.
Maybe,
and that was a big blow to my pride.
Yeah, it sounds like you felt like you were failing God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you, and the people in our youth group, and the people, our bosses who had hired us and believed in us, and people that invested us, as young pastors.
Yeah, they hired us to do this for years and years, not 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We only lasted a year then.
Yeah, and so that you're saying that was an experience of burnout that really woke you up to the realities of internalizing stress.
I was internalizing stress. Yeah. And then ways I found it later is like jaw pain, clenching my jaw, tightness in my jaw and neck. I'd realize, what stress am I? That can be a wake up for me.
Yeah, you're going through some of the anxiety symptoms, and we have a whole chapter on this in the Easy Yoke book. And one of those symptoms is that anxiety is always in your body. Yeah, so I have at different times had back issues, neck issues, tightness in my jaw, and most especially gut issues with ranging from butterflies, which is a normal sort of upset stomach you have when you're anxious, to digestive disturbances. And a lot of this has to do with internalizing stress. And so paying attention to our bodies, you're saying, that's something that you've been learning. It's been a really big deal for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I recall a time early in my career as a psychologist, and as a public speaker and author. And this was before coming to the point of the story that I tell in the Easy Yoke book about laying down on the altar my dream to be a best-selling Christian author. And at this point, I'd written three books with a publisher and 40,000 books in print, and had some success for a young psychologist in his early 30s. And but I was internalizing a lot of stress, and so the Lord really got my attention. This one time I was speaking to 2,000 people at a recovery conference, and I was the keynote speaker, and so I was the important speaker there, and I just felt tremendous pressure, and I was really ahead of myself. I was over my skis, and I just had a lot of anxiety, and then it affected my speaking, and so I didn't really give my best, and so it was kind of snowballing on me. And some of you listening know about that. A lot of people have a fear of public speaking and anxiety around that, and so that's especially hard if you're in the church world or the ministry world and you need to do some speaking, and that's where I was, and so I'm panicking, and my throat's closing up, my heart's pounding out on my chest, I'm sweaty, and I've got 2,000 people listening to me, and I'm getting increasingly self-conscious because I'm not doing a great job, and I know it, and I'm criticizing myself, and it's a hard thing.
It is. I remember that. That was about 28 years ago, and I was home with our young baby. I wasn't even with you, and I remember you coming home, and I remember just my wanting to fix you. You don't have to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't make yourself do this anymore, because I was so concerned about the stress.
Well, I was seriously considering quitting because I don't have a natural gift of speaking. I'm a writer. I'm a thinker. I'm a teacher, and so I was like, I'm not going to speak anymore. This is like not worth it. God cares about me. He doesn't want me going through all this, and you were very compassionate for me and not putting pressure or expectation on me, and that was really helpful. And I was really learning to experience God's grace in those years, and that I didn't have to be the hero, and I didn't have to take on all this stuff. And so I was talking to my psychologist at the time, because I was in regular therapy for years in this period of time, and about this experience. And I was telling him, I think I want to quit, and I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to speak, and it's too hard. It's too stressful. I get so anxious. And I was telling him about the anticipatory anxiety. That's the worst part. If you struggle with anxiety, it's when you're imagining a situation, a conflict, a conversation you don't want to have, a pressure, some responsibility that you have, or public speaking like we're talking about, and you've got some fear about it. And so you just imagine the scenario, and it just gets worse and worse.
And you had that because you had a long drive up to this conference. You were alone in that drive. I wasn't with you. I mean, now we would go together. You would talk to me about how you're feeling. But back then, no, we didn't know any of that. And you were going alone, and you hid and internalized all your anticipatory anxiety because you were trying to just care for me, who was this new mom, and trying to adjust to being a mom and care for our child alone all day, and you being God, which you probably felt guilty about. And I probably put guilt on you about. So, yeah, you had a lot of stress that you were probably internalizing. You were a new dad trying to juggle several careers, a new psychologist and writer.
I basically had a PhD in anxiety, but I was just learning to apply it to myself. Mm-hmm. Go deeper with that, and get words for my feelings. And so, ironically, and that's almost 30 years ago. It was a long time ago. I would say that today I am more prone to fear and anger and guilt. Mm-hmm. That I feel those emotions way more than I felt 25 years ago when I was in all this anxiety and having panic and internalizing stress. And the other thing that I feel more is sadness. And so what I've come to understand.
So why is that any better, though? Like, if I'm our listeners, I'm like, ooh, well, why would I want to feel all that? Why is that better than internalizing stress and feeling anxiety?
Yeah, well, it's a lot better, actually. But you do have to rethink some things here. We've probably heard sermons or read books telling us that you shouldn't feel afraid, or you shouldn't feel angry, or you shouldn't feel guilty, these kinds of things. And so much of that is just not helpful psychology, because it is natural in situations to fear rejection or failure or some threat. It is natural to feel angry when, or at least frustrated when your will is crossed, or you're mistreated, or you don't reach a goal. It's natural to feel guilty, or I prefer the word conviction, when you've done something wrong, or you've made a mistake, or you've disappointed somebody. And it's especially natural and healthy to feel sad when you lose something. Someone dies, you miss out on an opportunity, and everything in between. And so what happens with anxiety is these other primary feelings that I'm touching on are being denied. In the midst of the stress of life, when we are denying sadness and these other feelings, it becomes anxiety. And the problem with anxiety is it's a secondary emotion because of all this other primary core, acute, repressed emotion that's being denied. And so then we're just anxious all the time, and it's siphoning off all this energy. And a lot of us are anxious, and we don't even hardly know it, because we never know what it's like to really be at peace. I've had so many people tell me that.
Some people, though, think that they need their anxiety in order to have energy and motivation.
Yeah, you can use anxiety just kind of, because with that can come adrenaline and other hormones that are activating us, but it's stress hormones. But that's not good. That's not good for our body. I mean, in an emergency, God has made us so that, thank God for adrenaline, but that's meant to be a short-lived situation for a particular crisis or challenge. And, adrenaline feels good. We could have a whole other conversation about me as an adrenaline addict, because that's my history. I mean, you get confidence, and you get energy, boldness, even elation from adrenaline. But when we're constantly tapping into those adrenaline stores, we destroy our adrenal glands and our bodies and our souls, because we're not meant to live in that. We're meant to live in rhythms that include quiet and rest, and to be able to find peace in gentle ways. But to come into true peace, you have to learn how to experience catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn the experience of being vulnerable about your emotions and your struggles and your shortcomings with someone who is a good, gentle, compassionate listener, who puts energy into listening to you and prayerfully listening to you, so that you can articulate the things that you're feeling and experience being understood and accepted. And then you start to experience this cathartic relief. Your whole soul just goes, I'm not alone. I don't have to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. I don't have to do this perfectly. I don't have to please this person. I don't have to hit a home run with every sermon I preach. I don't have to be the world's best church leader, or whatever your situation is. You just relax into that easy yoke of Jesus. The Lord is present with me. He loves me. He's ministering the presence of Abba to me.
Yeah, when we're disconnected and internalizing our emotions, we're missing that they actually can be good servants. They can actually help us connect with God. They can help us become aware of ways that we're disconnecting from God or disconnected from Him. They can be graces.
And so as we experience that empathy, that cathartic expression and release, that increasing self-awareness that comes through an authentic relationship and an authentic, honest prayer, it's in that context that we have this sense of centeredness and groundedness and presence and mindfulness and alertness and soulfulness about our being that enables us to be a non-anxious presence for others. And everybody longs for that. And so in your ministry as a pastor, as a small group leader, as a parent, as a worker at your place of work, wherever you are, Jesus says, you are the light of the world. And an important dimension of that shining light and warmth of God's presence is being in the easy yoke of Jesus, or being a non-anxious presence with the Prince of Peace. And when we're like that, we're in a place that we can give empathy to others because we're emotionally present to them. We've got capacity to tune in, to listen, to be supportive, to offer an affirming word, and even to as we said, bless the one that curses you, as we talked about last podcast. And do that without going into fear or shame, but because we're yoked to Jesus, the Lord, and the Prince of Peace, and because He's taking care of me, and because I have a circle of confidence in people that are part of my life with Jesus, and the Lord is using that to strengthen my soul, and so then now I can be concerned for other people's soul. And if you are a leader, this is the most important thing that you can do to really complement and put a supercharger on your gifts. Because, if you're a high-powered leader of a church or an organization, you're preaching sermons to people every week. I mean, you've got a place of some influence, and people are looking up to you. And if you're an executive and you're leading a whole staff, that's a lot of power. Some of you listening, you've got hundreds of people, thousands of people even that look to you. And so if you, with that respect, that power, that ambition, that force of personality, if you become a gentle, emotionally present, non-anxious presence for people, I mean, they'll follow you anywhere.
And some of you are parents, and you have great influence with the formation of your children. And if you become a non-anxious presence to them, it's going to make an incredible eternal difference in their life and character. Yeah,
because the parent who's a non-anxious presence doesn't say to their kids, "Oh, don't cry. It's okay. You see, you're fine. It's no problem here. You're not bleeding, or it'll get better. I'll kiss it and it'll make it better." As a non-anxious presence, you're able to be emotionally alive to what's happening there, and tune into your child and say, "Oh, that hurt, didn't it? I'm sorry that happened. How are you feeling?" And you're absorbent. And see, everybody needs the soul of somebody else to be absorbent to them. Mm-hmm. And so when as leaders, we learn this, it so hugely empowers our leadership, because leadership is about relationship.
And as we resoul in Christ, as we're connected with Him, as we're taking care to share our emotions with the Lord and with an ambassador of Christ, it enables us to be able to then absorb others, because we don't have to hold and internalize those either. Mm-hmm. But if we're holding and internalizing the stresses that we're absorbing from others, then that's a cause of burnout too, and a problem too.
Yeah, if you're internalizing stress to the max, then you're denying emotion and you're emotionally backed up.
And we're not made to internalize other stress and hold that and carry that responsibility in of ourselves. God tells us to cast our cares on Him, to release it to Him, to process it and hand it over to Him.
Right. So when we learn to not internalize stress and resoul in the ways that we're talking about, then we can give people empathy. And when we give empathy, it's actually a gentle way of giving somebody's stress back to them. You don't internalize it and make yourself responsible to fix it. Mm-mm. You don't get yourself buried in a sense of burden for that other person, because that's not going to be helpful to them.
No.
Instead, you're solid, you're rooted, you're grounded, you're in the joy and peace of the Lord. And as you listen, then you put words to what you hear the person saying, or you ask questions, you reflect feelings, and that's a way of saying, "Look, this is what I'm hearing from you that you're struggling with. This is your challenge. This is your life," and implicitly, it's your responsibility to deal with it. But it's such a gentle way of doing that, because you're saying, "I'm with you. Mm-hmm. I care. I'm praying for you."
And as a minister, when I leave being with somebody who I've been containing their emotion, and I've been letting my soul, absorb and be with them and empathize with them, if I leave and I can't release that to the Lord and really trust it through prayer and all of that, then usually there's some enmeshment, or there's something about me that's connecting to my own repressed emotions that I'm defended against.
Yeah, so we need to live in continual cycles of self-reflection and God reflection.
Yes.
Knowing God and knowing self are two sides of the same coin. John Calvin taught that That's really important. And of course, love one another relationships are in the middle of that also. And so it's as we are more aware of ourselves that we can confess our sins and our brokenness and our needs. So we got to be okay with admitting that stuff. And that's central to resouling. That's central to this whole series of podcasts here when we're talking about preventing the hidden causes of burnout. It's not just work less hours. Mm-mm. That is not enough. And that's really not the main problem.
It's not just go on retreat.
Yeah, it's look into your soul. It's understand the psychology of your personality and what's going on with you. It's be vulnerable with God and some people. It's learn some new not only a retreat is important for a break and learning and training, but the real test of it is to change how I'm living. Because that's the point of the easy yoke, is getting work done. That's the point we make in Your Best Life in Jesus Easy Yoke. Is, hey, Jesus is saying, come pull a plow across the field with me, because there's hungry people that need to be fed. The gospel needs to be shared. The work of the church needs to be done. Your family needs to be loved. And so rolling up our sleeves and working with Jesus is an honor. It's an intimate thing to do. And a lot of life is our work. So the point of preventing burnout is not, don't work hard, don't work long hours. Of course, we need to be balanced about it. The point is, watch out for these hidden culprits, and internalizing stress is a main one.
Jesus, thank you that you are with us, that you are for us, that you're not afraid of our own emotions, that you're the good shepherd that even goes after those lost parts of us that we've internalized and hidden away. We ask, Lord, that you would give courage to each person listening to open their souls to you, to let out with you and with an ambassador of you the stress that they've been internalizing and holding on to let you teach them more about some of the other emotions that they're feeling and how your grace can meet them in that. Thank you, Jesus, that you are actively working to help each listener not run into burnout, but to resoul in you. Amen.
Amen. You can visit us at soulshepherding.org to subscribe to our blog and access over 1,000 free resources we've created to help you thrive with Jesus. One of my favorite things about Your Best Life in Jesus Easy Yoke is that it was an opportunity for me to integrate Christ-centered psychology and biblical spirituality. And so I just hope you'll get a copy of this, because it's going to really help you with whatever stressors you're dealing with in your life or your ministry, and how to do that in the context of your intimacy with Jesus.
Thank you for joining us on the Soul Talks podcast. For these resources and more, follow the links in the episode notes or visit us at soulshepherding.org.